Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast, way out there in Hawaii and Guam, America, Samoa. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. It's another beautiful day. I'm excited for today's training, but it's more of a fireside chat. So we're excited about that. Thank you for those of you showing up early and on time. Do me a favor, keep putting into the chat your company name, your core competency. Let others know that you exist. If you're open to connecting, let them know that. We bring you the training and the interviews in here, but you have a chance to network with others in the government contracting space in chat separate from me. So just engage, connect offline, and you'll be able to build more connections. If you feel comfortable doing that, let us know what city and state you're coming from, because often, let's say San Antonio, somebody else is down in San Antonio, and maybe you guys can connect. I'm excited to get started on today's training. Let's just make sure I got my stuff going on here correctly. I'm going to get rid of my scroll bars. And I'm excited to bring on Major General Treviño. And let me just bring you right to the stage. We're going to get started pretty fast. I'm excited to have you here. I really appreciate that you came in. I appreciate how you helped me understand how to say the name in such a great way. Thank you for being here. Usually we have tactical in the weeds kind of guests and myself doing that every day. But having somebody at your level at a much more strategic level is really such a gem for us. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, Neil. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the dialogue and the conversation. I love what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And by the way, if you have questions, just put them into the chat. If we don't get to them now, we can follow up with the Air Force team and connect and get you answers back. We're going to reference things. We'll drop those links in as well. So one of the first questions I wanted to just start with is just helping everybody put you in context with what your role is now in the Air Force and where you started. Because like all of us, you started somewhere and you're where you're at. And I noticed you started off in the acquisition side. Can you just give us a little, walkthrough of your journey from beginning to now?
Sure, Neil. So I started out as a contracting buyer or contracting specialist back in 1993. I was in systems contracting. I didn't know what contracting was, but I had a lot of great teammates and trainers who helped me understand what the Federal Acquisition Regulation was. And I'm here now as a Deputy Assistant Secretary for Contracting. 17 assignments later, I've been deployed. So I've learned both the system sides, the operational side, and the enterprise side, and just kind of soaking in knowledge as well with our acquisition teammates, and then all of our operators and requirement owners, because I always say in contracting, you don't really have a job unless you have customers and mission partners, because otherwise what is there to purchase? We do have our own requirements, but most often we're dealing with mission partners and working on their requirements.
No, I love that term. I want to, not that I do much on Twitter, but I like this tweetable moments of this idea of mission partners. And for us in the industry to be able to understand that, right? There's the acquisition shop or contract shop, and then there's the mission partners. You and I connected actually on LinkedIn when I had shared the contracting flight plan for the Department of Air Force. And that was exciting for me because I always learn and I like sharing with the industry. But I wanted to start there with just asking you, what's the purpose of these strategic plans, right? I share them out all the time and I consume them, but this particular plan of yours and the other strategic plans that align with it, what should we be paying attention to as an industry, and why are they valuable to us in addition to the government?
So I always think, your strategic plan outlines just like your business plan, right? If I'm a small business, I have to know what my core competencies are, and then I'm going to come up with a plan on how I'm going to get my core competency out to the masses and get that consumed, right? How am I going to produce that? And so our strategic plan is for the Department of the Air Force, for all of our contracting professionals. We have about 9,000 contracting professionals, pricers, data analysts, all working in that field. And when you are in the different of those 9,000, they fall under 27 senior contracting officials that get their acquisition authority from me, the head of the contracting activity. Wow. How do we tell 9,000 people in up to 87, 90 locations worldwide where we're going? And so it's a roadmap that lays out our lines of effort and our objectives and then the key results, and then we have metrics that how we know if we meeting it. Were we successful, or did we not quite meet it? And then we try to do some timelines too. But our strategic plan lays out where we're going in the next year, and then we follow up on it regularly with our senior contracting officials to make sure we're either meeting our gates, need more resources, need more time, and that all those 9,000 professionals and change agents across contracting are following where we're going. And if not, we got to be better on our strategic communications.
No, that's awesome. And I mean, I love those documents actually, because they make me better as a business person, because I watch how you do things. I'm like, oh, I should kind of be doing that same thing in my business with my team, et cetera. So if we pull a thread just a little bit on that, how does industry benefit from looking at what you're communicating to the 9,000 internal people? How can we benefit, or how can we learn based on reading those documents?
Well, so I'll give one example. So our line of effort one is building mission-focused business leaders. And to build mission-focused business leaders, we have to be proficient, we have to be trained, we have to understand big picture, the acquisition itself, what is the mission trying to be accomplished. And so for just one example, if we're talking about, I'm a contracting professional and I need to understand how to do market research. I need to understand what market intelligence is. Well, then on the counterpart side with our small businesses, then you are part of that market research story, right? You're maybe responding to requests for information or requests for proposal. So it's iterative, right? In that market research realm, we know that again, FAR Part 10, Federal Acquisition Regulation, thou shalt do market research. But if I've never been taught how to do market research, what am I going to do? And, so we're building that competency up in our professionals, and then it's a improvement area. And then on the small business side, or the medium business, or the large business, we get feedback. Is your market research accurate? Did you miss something? And folks need to know that it's continuous, right? It's like you could have an industry day today, and then tomorrow somebody that wasn't there didn't make your market research, but you need to know they exist because they could have some technology that you might need to incorporate. And so it's like living market research. It's never ending.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I'm very happy to just hear that what I continuously teach aligns to, how you're describing it, because I talk about looking at strategic plans as a strategic way to do sales, to look in to see what your customer needs and align what you sell to that need, that requirement, that mission that they're trying to accomplish, et cetera. Even something as simple as the way you describe the market research. The other thing that you touched on, and I really want to make a point of just saying this out there, I personally believe the biggest challenge with the DIB, or the industrial base across all federal agencies, is not that it's shrinking, it's that buyers can't find sellers. And we small businesses, even if we're good doing $5, $10, $20 million in good past performance that you would value, we're invisible to your team when they're doing market research. And so this is more for the people watching than you, is that you've got to go into SAM and DSBS and increase your profile so that they can find you. And that's something that anybody, PTAX out there and others can help with. Just going along this line of industry, doing our homework and going in there and going on the truism that the Air Force does want to work with smalls. By the way, if I pause 1 second, for everybody, if you're new to this, there's a Department of Air Force, and this is where you're at, right? And under that is the Air Force and the Space Force. So don't forget, there's these two huge organizations in there. But I wanted to ask a question: why does the Air Force and Space Force, why do they want to work with smalls? If we assume that they do, why? What's the value we bring to the mission or to the need?
So I'm going to go, sometimes I go zoom out and zoom in. I'm going to start with zooming in first and then zoom out. So like I said earlier, if you're a small business and you have whatever your expertise is as a core competency, what I tie that to in the United States is national security. And I'm not talking about just the military. I'm not just talking about the Air Force. I'm not just talking about the Department of Defense, but all federal agencies, we contribute to national security. And all businesses contribute to national security. It doesn't have to be the military line. It can be economically, and that economic strength, I have said for over 20 years, I've been in for 31 years, that our small businesses are the economic engine that we rely on across the United States. And that's how it feeds in. So you're contributing either directly with hopefully a Department of the Air Force contract, but even indirectly by your day-to-day operations, by being an entrepreneur, by understanding or contributing to technology growth, by the service industry, by information technology. All of that feeds into, big picture, again, our gross domestic product, which when I look at that, it's everybody working together for national security. So keeping us strong as a nation.
No, that is awesome. And you just drew another tweetable moment, which I might start calling it chattable moment, is somebody put that in there. Small businesses are the economic engine in the chat for other people to be able to see that. Because I love that. It's
I love it.
For us to see our perspective in there more than just I sell a widget or a service. No, you really do contribute to getting a man on the moon and back, or whatever Kennedy said back in the 60s. I guess it was. No, I don't know when it was. It was before me. That's for sure. So just going on this idea that we're the economic engine, and when I say we, I'm part of the industry and the small business world. If we're looking across, and this is a really broad question because of your role, but where do you see small businesses in particular being able to be helpful to the Department of Air Force, in contrast to like Boeing is building the airplanes or something, right? So we're not going to build you a new airplane, but where do you see us fitting most, and where the Air Force might want to see more of us participating in?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, Neil, because I mean, everything that we're doing with like the defense industrial base, or larger, the industrial base for the United States, whether or not you are a large business or what we call a prime, whether or not you're a medium-sized business or a small business, whether you're a commercial or, a non-traditional type of provider, a vendor that has something, we just this week announced what some of those critical areas that we're looking into. And so, I would encourage people to go to the Defense Small Business Innovative Research, or Small Technical Transfer Research, which is the Defense Cyber Innovation Portal. And they just announced what the challenges are. And so those opened, I think, this month in October, which, is getting ready to get over. So happy Halloween. And those will be open until 6 November. But the types of industries that we're looking for are autonomy, advanced materials, biotechnology, knowledge management services, can be information technology, cybersecurity, all of the things that you would kind of expect with not just the Department of Defense and things that further our national security, but things that you're probably hearing about in the news, or what's the latest and greatest. But the only other ones, mesh networks, that's huge right now. That helps us with our decision making and bringing humans in the loop to accelerate turning data into information so we can make decisions. Space, microelectronics, solar, it's the things that we are, using in our cell phones to get connected with satellites, but, and what we're doing right now to be live. But it's those technology advances on the cutting edge that maybe have dual use capability that help in the business world and the commercial world, but also have application in the military world.
No, that's perfect. And I'm just checking something out. I did a whole event recently. It was a week-long event, and I just want to make sure I had the URL before I said it, with CIBR, with DoD, DARPA, Army, Air Force,
Yes.
and missile defense. And but people can go to govconchamber.com/CIBR, and somebody will put it into the chat. My sister Cecilia, I see her. She might have even beat me to it. She's been working with me, for a long, long time, but in the chambers for the last 8 years. And in there, you can watch replays of these people talking about this and expanding on what you've just said. And the idea is also in there, you can get these links. So it's easier to click right to the DoD sites that were just mentioned.
Yes.
The other thing is just a quick plug. Make sure for everybody who's here, we've got over 100 people right now live. Go and follow the Department of Air Force's small business page on LinkedIn, which I'm assuming somebody's going to put in again into the chat. But they're on LinkedIn and they're active on LinkedIn. I was talking to them yesterday. They want to be engaged and talk and engage with industry in a way that supports today's interview, but also just whatever way that you want to support the Air Force. So go check that out. Department of Air Force small business page.
Yes. And I'm just going to say that's run by Mr. Scott Kaiser. Scott Kaiser and I, he and our teams, we are like neck and neck. We do everything together, and he teaches me a lot about the engagements that he does. And then we align with the OSD small business with Farouk Mitha. And, if I don't put a shout out to our Apex accelerators that used to be our procurement technician, helping assistance centers, our PTACs, but you can go in through PTACs or you can go in through Apex accelerators. And they also have all these links on what it is that we need for the Department of the Air Force and what we're looking for right now. Yeah,
I'm one of those old school guys who is trying to transition Fort Benning to, I think it's Liberty or whatever it is now, and PTACs, Apex accelerators. I'll get into that rhythm, but when I start going fast, I'm like, oh, it's this. But I like it too that they left it up, so you can find them one way or another.
Yes, they left it up.
By the way, just one quick thing: if you're not also following the SBA, the SBA has district offices around the country that work side by side with the Apex accelerators and others. You have all these folks out there, and I call them the 7 mentors. They should be on your board of advisors, like unofficial board of advisors, but they can give you a lot of guidance that expands on what we're talking about. I wanted to just ask another question, and this might go too low in the weeds, and so you tell me from where you're at. But this idea of market research, right? The government has got a need, and they're reaching out. Whether the need is at the early stage and they're doing a request for information, maybe trying to have a discussion with industry, or they're doing sources sought. And what I say is you can influence from a seller standpoint. This is where you try to influence the requirements or the acquisition approach. Doesn't mean you're tricking them, but hey, this is why you should go with this NAICS instead of that NAICS or something. My question is what you're hearing maybe from the field of your team. Are they getting enough responses back from small business? And that's a high level question, right? Are they getting enough responses back to market research? Does the Air Force feel like, hey, we need more industry engagement? What are you hearing about that? And any suggestions for us?
So Neil, I like what you said earlier, right? When you're in a marketplace, it's about buyers and suppliers. And are the buyers finding the suppliers, and are the suppliers finding the buyers? So there's like a lot of matchmaking that has to go on. And so I think when we have our industry days, we have teams that have reverse industry days, which I love, because then that's kind of opening it up with here's some like a scope or an area of interest that we're looking for, some of those areas of interest that I already identified. But then we invite the conversation in, because then you can have a dialogue and hear what's really going out in the commercial space that we may not know about. And that's why we have to go to industry associations and industry engagements. You have to read publications, you have to read online. So that's one way to get your information. But the other one, is you want to be, you want the door of information to be open, and you want it to be revolving so that you are getting something from somebody and they're approachable, and you need to know, like, okay, well, to your original question is like, are we getting enough? I will say we never have enough. But then on the other hand, it depends. It's like, you don't want to be overly, you don't want to have like too much, but what is too much? I want to always have enough, and I always want to have enough where I can have a conversation. When we're lowering lowering barriers to small business, competition is key. That's one of my bosses, Honorable Hunter, Mr. Andrew Hunter. He has asked us, like, how do you lower barriers to entry? And one of that is competition. And so to your question of, are we getting enough? We want to have competition and to drive that conversation. And I don't want to put a grade on it, but I'll just say I have an insatiable appetite for, supplier and knowing what's going on with the market. And I know that our contract specialists and contracting officers do too. I know that our acquisition officers do as well. And I know that our operators and warfighters do. And so together as a team, we're on the government side, we're all collecting all of that. And then we want to make sure that we're approachable and that industry has a door into us so that they can give us what's the latest and greatest.
No, that's perfect. And just going sideways, I never look at chat while we're talking. When I'm training, I'm like, I'll come back afterwards, I'll look at it, but I like to stay in focus. But because I'm not doing all the talking, I happen to look down and somebody had a really good question. I'm curious on where this fits into your world. But CMMC, and I wrote like the first book about CMMC years ago saying, hey, this industry, this is what you need to pay attention to. And it's been out there forever. But it seems like there's like a finality to it here. What are you guys hearing, and what's the guidance? Maybe the lessons we can learn as industry is what guidance are you passing down through your team about CMMC?
So for cybersecurity maturity model certification, CMMC, if you're not familiar with it, what they just released the final rule. I think it was like the 15th of October. And as you said, we've been kind of looking at CMMC for a couple of years where we're trying to get feedback from industry. And so what I like where they have now is they have the tiers. And what I would encourage everyone to do is like go to Project Spectrum and OSD small business. That's their kind of lead on this. The Air Force, we work with the SAF CN office and the CIO, and then of course with all of our experts in the A6 community, our comm and intel folks. But the overarching piece of CMMC is there's some self-certification on the lowest level, but depending on your access to the networks and what you will have on that, it's really how are you being cyber secure and aware with your information technology systems. But then if you are working with a government contract, you are also going to have access to controlled unclassified information, CUI. And so we need to make sure that you are secure and you don't have vulnerabilities. So that just came out, the final rule, but we've been talking about it for years. I would encourage people to go to Project Spectrum to do more homework, and they will actually teach you, we don't have enough time today, and I am certainly not an expert in CMMC. I put the clause in my contracts and I say thou shalt abide by CMMC, but right. I am not a subject matter expert in that. But I like to give people the why behind it, and that Project Spectrum really gives some good links on you self-assessing what you have and what you need to know so that you can get your certification and then be eligible for government contracts.
Yeah, I know the priority is cybersecurity, but what I teach people is that if you just think selfishly for 1 second, if you're not paying attention to CMMC, if you have let it bother you for the last few years, you can do that, but you're going to impact your ability to sell to the government, because where DoD goes, the other civilian agencies go. Everybody's going to go that direction. And so there's a lot of people can support. Actually, Spectrum just reached out to me today. Yay. I think because of you, and they're like, hey, can we come and show our stuff? I'm like, sure.
Awesome.
Now that it's real, like that's why I've always kind of held off, because it just kept getting kicked down the thing. So we've got about 6 minutes left, and I want to try. I appreciate that side. I definitely wasn't looking for, this side, you being a cybersecurity expert, but that whole idea that it's in there. And for the people who are listening, make sure that you understand that CMMC is real, and go check it out now. Start learning, because it will take you time. And in my opinion, it doesn't matter whether it costs money or not. It's the cost of doing business. So if you're a restaurant, you need to buy an oven or something. There's always costs and there's always ways of doing it, but it's a reality now. So go take a look at that. I wanted to go into your team, because one thing I really wanted to cover down on is sometimes we don't understand as industry or, as a supplier, we just have something we want to sell you. And since 2018, I've been saying, look, there's no conspiracy of the contracting officers to hold us smalls down or us hub zone firms. They don't talk to each other and do this. it's market research. It's one of my favorite things about the federal market is it's so open and transparent. And in my opinion, easy. It takes time to get good at it, but nowhere else can you have this level of transparency. And so I wanted to dig into a little bit about your team. You already talked about the size, but can you go back a little bit to your team and the size and that, thousands across the country, and just give us an understanding of like what they have on their plate. Like when we think about, if they just got one opportunity or something, how hard is that type thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think my immediate staff at SAF AQC, we have 90 folks, and we have divisions that go across weapon systems, operational, enterprise, policy, making sure that we are conducting outreach, field support, staying on the cutting edge of all of these policies that are coming out. We want to make sure that we're reaching across the headquarters staff here at the Pentagon, but then we also reach out to our senior contracting officials and make sure that we have conversations and relationships with them. Their day-to-day, depending on if they're at the installation level or if they're a part of a program office, is very busy. And so, what I really try to do is, I think we talked about it, Neil, a little bit earlier, is like I look through the lens of alignment, prioritization, and simplification. And I want to be aligned with what my senior leaders want. I want to be aligned with what my requirement owners and mission partners need. I have to set my priorities. It's very hard at the installation level, and probably even your listeners day to day is like, how do you set your priorities for the day? How do you set your priorities for the week? I told you how we set the priorities for the year through our strategic plan. But that simplification is that constant communication. You have to be relentless about it, helping people in simple chunks of time understand where they're going, but also so that they're, if the clause is getting ready to come out, you just get a notification of like new clause. Well, now we understand is like nobody operates that way. You could have awarded a contract, at the 10 a.m. at the same time that the clause came out, but how do we message what's coming down the pipeline as fast as we know it? And then how do we train all of our contracting professionals so that they are equipped to handle these changes? I know we're not talking about change today, but it's one of my favorite things. I love talking about change agency, but if I can give information to our teams and personnel out in the installations across the world, globally, that means that they're going to have a better use of their time and can prioritize their efforts to help the customer who's coming in, and then the phone calls that they need to make with industry, whether or not it's a new contract in market research or it's on the afterwards of the performance of how are you doing? Here's the program review. Are you getting feedback? And then, when's that contract ending if it's an annual contract, and when we're getting ready for the next one. So people are busy, and that's why I love to prioritize the time, because we never have enough time. But yeah. I just think that our folks out in the field are awesome. They are very passionate about contracting. They want to help other people learn about contracting. They do like talking to small businesses about contracting, but we love partnering with our small business specialists as well. And it's like pick up the phone, pick up the computer, have a Teams call, post something, but it's a communication that really is never ending.
That's funny. It's such a great answer. I should have asked a question before that, because that would have been a perfect place to end, but I'm going to take full advantage of like the minute and a half left we got. I love that. I'd love to come back and talk with you about change. And I know there's other things that you were talking about, because industry, we want to hear this and learn how to become better partners to the government. I was going to just maybe end with this question for you, just a high level question of, if you're going to leave us with one tip for small businesses or really industry on how we can better serve Air Force, can you think of one thing that you might leave us with that says, hey, consider doing this? Or
I think my overwhelming theme, like advice or tip, would be shared ownership. And what I believe in shared ownership is I always have a responsibility to hold myself accountable, but then I have a boss or a partner that I'm working with, or a colleague or a counterpart, and they're going to need things from me. And so they're going to hold me accountable. And I think that's the perfect kind of analogy of relationship between government and industry is we have a shared ownership for all of the contracts that we're working on, or all of the market research that we're working on, and even the performance. And if we all hold ourselves accountable and we take our shared ownership like really seriously, then we're going to be doing the right things. When one party thinks, nope, it's all you, 100% on you, that's where we have difficulties. And so it's never perfect 50-50. Sometimes it's 45, sometimes it's 50-55. But if you commit to that shared ownership, I think we'll have a great relationship. And I really encourage that.
That's a perfect tweetable moment, by the way. Put shared ownership in the chat if you buy it, like if you're excited about it like I am. So we're out of time. General Treviño, I really appreciate your time. I'm going to follow up. I'll look at people's questions. I'll follow back up with you and your team to go forward. But I just want to say thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you for having me. And thank you for all of your listeners online for everything that you're doing for national security.
I appreciate that. I'm going to send you backstage. I'm going to end, and then I'll come back to you. Thank you. Okay. Hey, remember, as you go forward, we're out of time, but government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. Part of the process is going to research the Air Force, understand what they're doing through the strategic documents. Also, go to the Department of Air Force small business page on LinkedIn, follow them, begin to engage with them. They're out there. I talked to them yesterday. They're super excited to engage with industry even more. So go do that. If you appreciated having the Air Force out today, say thanks, Air Force, into the chat.